Hello and welcome to our new session of Policy Matrix. Today we'll be interviewing Mr. Manish Singh. Mr. Manish Singh is a distinguished IAS who has had a long career in both district level corporations such as the BMC, and he has worked for major projects for the government of India, such as the disinvestment scheme and multiple other projects. We hope that today Mr. Manish Singh can help the youth of our country understand and develop an interest in public policy and give us an insight into how he got into public policy as a start. So, Mr. Manish Singh, how and when did you develop an interest in public policy?
My father was a government servant, right? And my uncle was into politics. So I used to see that interaction in my home, and my uncle, he was very well connected with the district administration because he used to work closely with them as he was building his political career. And during that phase, he through him I had a chance to interact with the then collector of my district and other senior officers. And my father would talk about his interaction with the civil servants in his work. And that actually laid the seeds in my mind of this civil service as a career option. And then when I was doing my engineering, I got slightly diverted and I was more attracted to the corporate side. But then again, I met a friend whose father was a senior police officer. And we started talking, we became friends, and then both of us decided to take a plunge into the civil services exams. And that was the beginning, how I got attracted into this. And I was fortunate that I could make it, and here I am.
Also, did your background, I mean, for those who are not as fortunate to have parents or family members who are in public policy or parents or family members who are in civil services, do you think that without such a background people can still be attracted to public policy and still have a viable career option in it?
Yes, very much so, because in India, every one of us, even if we may not be directly within the family, have an interaction on the civil services side, but the civil services, their actions and their visibility in the media, etc., is such that we all get touched by it and impacted by it, and also we get attracted to it through the media and through other mediums when we see the kind of work they are doing, uh, and some of them do exceptional work which become inspirational for young people across the country.
So, as it's often said, the civil services is a vast organization, it has several roles. So, how did you get attracted to public policy sector specifically within the government? And do you think that your training, the duration of your training, or maybe the cadre that you chose made a difference in this decision?
So what happens? The service that I am in, the Indian Administrative Service, the by design, by training, it is focused on to public policy making and public policy implementation. So the training is totally focused onto that. Post that, you are first thrown into the real world of implementation in the remotest areas of India. So I started my career from Bastar, and there various schemes and various programs of the government, it is difficult to deliver there because of a particular kind of a ecosystem that's there. But having done that, then over a period of time, after 10-12 years, you are brought back to the headquarters or the state capital, and there you move from implementation into the policy making side at the state government level, and then you can move up to Delhi for the central government level. And at every stage when these transitions are there, the civil services in India is structured such that the officers are then given a refresher course, and they taken to the academy and reoriented to focus on to the next stage of their career. So that is how I'm now got into this policy making aspect.
So, as a civil servant, when political parties in power change, what does it mean for certain policy tracks? How do civil servants, absorb the impact of such a change and maintain the overall continuity of different plans? For example, when you said you worked in Bastar, I'm sure there were a certain government might have favored certain policies, and with the change in government, they might prefer other ones. So, how did a overall cohesive policy decision? How was it taken?
Okay, so I'll first give you my experience, because I saw these two big transitions, one at the state level and one the another at this central government level. So I was in the state of Madhya Pradesh when the Congress government in 2003-4 was voted out, and the BJP government came in. And then I was in the central government in the finance ministry when in 2014 the Congress UPA government got voted out, and the NDA government came in. So we are the permanent bureaucracy, permanent executive of the government, and fortunately in the Indian system, the election process is pretty long, and the manifesto which each party comes out when they go for the election, that gives you a broad idea of the changes or the direction of the policies that they are going to take. So it gives you some time to prepare, and it's not out of the blue. Yes, the prioritization depends. When they come in, they see the resources we put before them, the resource availability, and subject to that, then they start doing it. There are some changes which could be drastic, and therein the role of the permanent executive is to to put forth the pros, cons, the past experiences of the policy implementation to them, and it is they the political executive, they take that call. So that is the role. There are some drastic changes that happen, but by and large, because India is a developing country, and all the policies would be focused to public welfare. So maybe they want the mechanism could differ. In some cases, simple changes like the change in name of a program would only go ahead, but in some cases there would be dramatic U-turns. Uh, so yes, we navigate that situation as when we face it.
So, what advice would you have for those of us who are interested in public policy, especially in the governmental sector, through the civil services? And if you could give us a perspective of how what your own education path or your career path has been so far, which led you into civil services. So it could maybe perhaps give us a snapshot of what a person who is looking to work for the government in the civil services goes through in terms of both education experiences and what they bring to the table.
So this is a very very vast area, which gives you immense opportunity to make difference to the lives of people, especially in a country like India, which is a developing emerging economy, where things are changing and changing for the better. uh, just imagine a work or intervention which can get millions of people out of poverty, right? If it can intervention which could get the children have better education, have better nutrition, all these things. So these job satisfaction point of view, the public policy area is a very very uh, good area, very very I must say that job satisfaction wise, it was one of the very important areas to work in. The experiences, the what gets projected in the media at times is the negative aspects of the civil services, the challenges in terms of the political developments, or the political interferences, other thing like things. But those are aberrations. By and large, there is a immense scope for you to deliver along with the political bosses or political masters. Mind you, they are the people who have to go back and face those elections every 5 years, or uh, even shorter terms. But you are once you get into that field, you are the permanent executive, and you have to work with them, see their constraints, and deliver. And young people, I've seen young people leaving lucrative private sector jobs and coming into this field, and most of them are satisfied with what they end up doing here. And this service, this area of work offers you immense opportunity in terms of the scale. So if you, during the course of your work, you get interested into a particular field, you can focus onto that as well.
So that actually brings us to two separate questions. The first one being, as you mentioned, many people have left lucrative jobs to go for the civil services. You also mentioned that you did engineering before you attempted the civil services. So what do you think is the uh, do you think there's an optimum career path before somebody takes the civil services? Do you think that somebody should go for a specialization in terms of their own subject, or maybe education before they attempt the civil services, which is often described as a generalist service in that way? Do you think that is the best course of action, or do you think that people should keep civil services as an end goal in mind from the start?
Okay. So let me start with saying that we are in a time and age where it is now nothing is final. It's a continuous learning and continuous engaging kind of a situation. So the students who have actually had a slight maturity at the level of their education in terms of doing a master's or a higher level course can also come in, and people just after graduation can come in, and during the course of their work, or as they develop their career path in civil services, they get a chance to actually specialize, or take up further qualifications. It depends on the individual. I'd say it is no, there's no fixed way of doing it. But yes, people who come after having done some kind of a high level of course, they have that maturity when they get into the real world of policy making.
Also, the second question that I had for you regarding the previous question was, as you mentioned, that at the end of the day, it's the politicians who are facing these elections, and civil services are the permanent executives of the country. So, and as you also mentioned, there have also been a lot of negatives in the news and the media about the civil services, especially the corruption or the problems faced due to. So how does the civil services maintain accountability of these executives who are not challenged by elections every 5 years? How are they held to their
Yeah.
actions?
So there are various mechanisms to ensure that, and so for higher civil services, and in the recent times, in terms of uh, uh, kind of barriers to quick decision making, three C's have been pointed out: the courts, the 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 the, the civil society, and the court, civil society, and CBI, the Central Bureau of Investigation, right? So there are mechanisms within government to ensure that people don't get onto the wrong path. So and they are closely monitored. The accountability to the legislature, accountability to the audit wing of the government, the audit and account services itself is fairly independent, with a constitutional body authority leading it. So there are mechanisms, and in today's time and age, the public scrutiny is very high through civil society, through media, and of late, we've also had these institutions like Lokpal at the central level, but Lok Ayuktas at the state levels are there, and various agencies of the government act as checks and balances on the system, so that people don't get into the corruption side of the work.
And so, this as you've mentioned so far, we've been talking about the civil services and the governmental public policy sector. But how would you advise those who want to be part of public policy, but not necessarily through the governmental route?
Mm.
Maybe either affiliated with the government or just independently. Would you have a general advice on how people should proceed if they are interested in this sector?
So the role of civil society, the role of NGOs, the role of academia, the role of think tanks has increased, and they are making meaningful intervention into the public policy space. Uh, so what has happened because of the recent changes, that any public policy decision is let's take an example of a legislation. So if a major legislation has to be enacted by the government, there is a debate around it. And the debate is not only in the parliament or the state legislative assemblies, but the debate is in the public space. And the government comes out with a draft, publishes it, there is a debate, people can file representations to it. And all this is taken as input into the public policy making, and people who finally take a call on that. So the influence of these institutions, the civil society in general, have increased, and this is leading to a more robust policies coming out of from the government.
Okay, and as we have talked about, you've had a long, distinguished career. First, as working in Basta, then you've had stints in the BMC. You've worked in the Disinvestment Corporation. Currently, you're Minister Econ in the Embassy of London of India. So, one of the most interesting public policy decisions made by the government of India has definitely been the disinvestment policies followed uh, the post-Nehruvian era. And since you were a part of that, I would like to ask you, how how did the government of India decide to disinvest from public sector, and how much did civil services and civil servants have a role to play in that? And what do you think it means for the Indian economy in the coming years?
Okay. So what happened post independence? So the government had the resources. Government only had the resources. The private sector was not so developed. So government had to intervene in most of the spheres of the economy, be it uh, heavy engineering, be it heavy electricals, be it uh, telephone services, be it airlines. So government got into these sectors because of a particular stage of economic development in the economic history of this country, the country. But in the 80s, as we had this big change in the way governments would work in these areas, especially public service, in the public utilities sector uh, here in UK. And Margaret Thatcher showed how the private enterprise, private capital, and private efficiencies could be brought into some of these areas, and government could take a backseat and move out as the private sector developed. So that was actually keenly observed in India. And in the early 90s, as the size of public sector had become too unviable for the country, some areas were thought of to be divested. But it took a very, very long time till the the NDA one government of Mr. Bajpayee, where Mr. Arun Shourie and his secretary Pradeep Bajil came together, and they were given a separate department with a mandate for disinvestment, and then they delivered it. So the UK example was there, but India was has its own peculiar challenges. But the team of Mr. Shourie and Pradeep Bajil could actually deliver it. I have seen all those disinvestment that happened that time, and I really hold these two people in high regard. How without any precedence in India, they were able to do that then. And the companies that they divested then are really now doing very well. Take the example of Balco. Balco was in very bad shape, but today it's doing very well, and employing more people than it was employing then. Hindustan Zinc, similar case. So yes, uh, that happened, and then there was a change in the government, and the policy of disinvestment was actually put in a cold storage. So this is coming to your first question: how policies are prioritized and put in a cold storage when government changes. But when this government NDA government came back again 2014, they revived it. But unfortunately, they have not been able to deliver on it. The regular disinvestment of the listed companies is going on, but the actual privatization or strategic disinvestment, as it is called now, has not been they have not been able to deliver on that. Although some cases are being discussed, and they are at a very, very mature level. But the current situation would actually put there'll be challenges to executing them because of the market, the condition of the economic conditions in the developed world and in the private sector, where it would be difficult to find buyers for such companies as of now. But I'm sure the government will push for it, because the government is resource constrained, and disinvestment is one of the ways of not only generating resources, but cutting down on future expenditures that would have to be made to support these companies, government companies, to sustain.
So, do you think that this process of disinvestment will continue even in the post-corona scenario? Because as we see, certain countries are moving back towards the command and control economy of sorts. They're thinking of having a greater public stake in companies. And even with the Indian government, as we move towards an economy which is hard hit for jobs, do you think the government will plan to retain companies and create jobs through that, or would they prefer disinvestment, even though buyers may be a little more scarce in these times?
I'd say that the resource requirements of the government will actually push it to take the disinvestment route. And mind you, when I say that, I also see that there are almost 250 public sector undertakings in India at the central level. I'm not talking of the state level, but most of them are in areas where government has no business to be in business. And the government has been very, very clear on this, that there are areas where they want to get out of. Yes, the challenge in terms of running the process and getting the right buyer, getting the right value for the asset that you are divesting would be a challenge. But as the recovery picks up post COVID, I'm sure the disinvestment program of Government of India will actually be accelerated.
So the reason we have been discussing disinvestment is because it was at its time a radical change in the public policy sphere, especially as you mentioned, especially in the context of India. And the people who made this decision, they had a certain thought process and they went about it in a certain way. And processes such as disinvestment or the corona crisis, these are things which kind of throw a curveball at public policy makers. So what kind of advice would you have for public policy makers to deal with these kind of scenarios where they're thrown a situation which they might not know how to deal with, or which deals with moving into a different kind of scenario which they've never faced before?
So, what will happen is, and what should be, I'm sure the my colleagues in disinvestment department would be doing is, they would be looking at sectors where the impact on the economy is less, and where the bounce back would be faster. So, and if some of these sectors match with the identified companies or the government public sector undertakings which can be actually divested, then they'll do that matchmaking and push it ahead. Then what has happened over a period of time, the lot of government companies have been listed in the stock exchange. So those companies whose valuation can be actually uh, uh, derived from the markets directly would be easier to divest. So, and that has been the regular route of disinvestments till now. So that would be one of the focus areas. And then then there's something called a bundling, and the government PSUs and some private entities which government has certain stakes in, they have been bundled into an ETF. So the ETF route of disinvestment, where a small portion of, say, 10 companies is taken into a basket and divested, that route would be also one of the preferred routes till we are back to a normal situation where actual privatization could be uh, pushed.
While this is disinvestment specific as such, uh, with the coronavirus crisis, we've had a host of secondary crises such as the migrant labor crisis and a bunch of problems and situations which public policymakers couldn't necessarily predict. So, what advice would you have for public policymakers as a general approach to these kind of problems? Where they're not sure of, or they don't know how things are going to play out, or situations where they're thrown a curveball.
Yeah.
So,
So, the uncertainty is something that is the biggest challenge for any policymaker. So, when you are in a situation where you cannot predict the action, and when you are given a very short period of time to actually implement or and put in force a certain thing, that becomes very challenging. But given that thing, you should be you the public policy people should always be open and open to revising their strategy, depending on the emerging situation that comes out. So in this context, you have to have that flexibility to respond to the situation which emerges out of a certain decision that you have taken, and you should be open and willing to uh, make course corrections.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Manish. It was a pleasure talking to you, and I hope that your interview will inspire the next generation of public policy makers. And thank you so much for joining us
Thank you,
today.
Shama. All the best. All the best with your work.
Thank you.